Okay.
Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to a Q&A session for the Archaeology PGT, so that's postgraduate taught in University of Glasgow language, probably more widely known as master's programs in archaeology for the coming academic year, 2022-2023. We wanted to get together to give all of you who've joined us here today a opportunity to ask any questions you might have about the different archaeology degree programs that you've either signed up for and you're excited and you're ready to come, or that you're considering signing up for and you're maybe looking for a bit more information to help yourself to make a decision. So we are here today representing three different archaeology degree programs. The general overarching MSc in archaeology, which I'm probably the primary representative for. Dr. Susanna Harris is here representing material culture and artifact studies. And Dr. Ian Banks is here to talk to you about conflict archaeology and heritage. So those are our three degree programs. So if you have any questions that you would like to ask us, please do pop them into the chat and let us know what your question is, and we will be able to respond to it. But I thought I might start out by asking a question that many of you might have, and asking it of my two colleagues here today. And one of the things that we often have students ask us, and that I think it's important to think about, is what students really need coming into the degree, both in the sense of what's required, but also what we think is helpful for being prepared. So, Ian, would you be happy to make a first couple comments on this?
Yeah. I think really when it comes to what you actually need to do an archaeology master's, obviously you need the academic qualification, so you need to have done well in a first degree and so on. But to my mind, the most important things are that you've got a willingness to read widely and read things that maybe aren't quite the obvious things. People coming into the conflict course, they frequently think that all they really need to do is read about war and battles and so on. But actually, what we want them to do is make sure that they're taking account of all the other things that are happening in archaeology, because that kind of widespread knowledge is really going to help you to be a successful conflict archaeologist. And the other thing is to bring an open mind, because an open mind is it's the most important thing. It's really vital in terms of being able to cope with the things that you're going to be reading about. It's going to be important in terms of the way that you think about the world around you. So if you come with those two things, I think you're going to go well. You're going to go far.
Thanks, Ian. Susanna, do you have any thoughts on what you'd be encouraging students to be prepared with, or what they need to really do well in the material culture and artifact studies program?
Hello, everyone. I think what Ian said was very wise. Yes, of course, you will need the relevant qualifications. But I'd also like to add that we do have people with really quite different experiences coming into the master's program. So it's not unusual for people to have already started their career and come with quite a lot of experience in museums, field work, or possibly volunteering. Others will come straight from the degree that they've just finished, their undergraduate degree. So there's a range there, and it's actually very nice to have that range, because not only do you have the course that you'll learn from, but the cohort of students at master's level brings a lot in itself. So you'll meet people who've got interests and backgrounds of all sorts. The master's year is very intense. So what do I think I'd bring? I think I'd bring all those skills from undergraduate level and really expect to be developing those to a higher level. So the reading that Ian's talking about, I think the curiosity, being open to study new things. You might be on a course and think, well, why am I going to look at glass beads? I'm interested in something else. But by expanding into all sorts of different areas, you will, I'm sure, find new things that you haven't come across before. And so I think the curiosity, yes, willingness to look at things you haven't come across, but also there are opportunities to develop, of course, the things that you are interested in. So yeah, I think it's the curiosity, bringing what you've already done and being willing to grow into that graduating master student by the end of the year.
I mean, I would add to that because this is very much a one-year degree, there are things that you really need to be thinking about early on, so that if you're going to be doing something like a dissertation or a portfolio or a project or something like that, you need to be thinking about that very early on, and getting your ideas sorted. Don't lag about. Don't think, well, that's what I'll do in the summer, and leave it till then. You're going to find that it's whatever masters you do, it is very full on, and you really do need to spread yourself. But we're talking about doing lots of reading. The thing is that you don't have very many taught sessions during the week, so you've got plenty of time for reading. The GU library is absolutely astounding. It's got really, really good resources. You have absolutely no excuse for not doing a lot of reading. So, get in that library, make friends with the librarians, and just knock yourselves out. It's one of the few opportunities that you'll have to spend a significant part of your time reading about something that really interests you, not pestered by actually having to go to work and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And so a question we also sometimes get about this is about the number of hours, for example, of practical experience that might be required or recommended. So, and I think this is maybe a bit of a misconception on the part of candidates or people coming into the degree that, you won't do well if you haven't been on at least 2 excavations or worked in a museum or participated in a field school. And for me, it's beneficial to have done some of those things. But as both of you were saying, we really get students from quite diverse backgrounds. And so those things can be helpful, but aren't a necessity. So if you were to kind of along those lines be suggesting to a student one thing that they might do between now and September, you've got kind of this last month of summer to get ready. Would you recommend something in particular to go out to do, or a place to visit, or something to read?
Personally, I would suggest that for our course, that maybe going and visiting a battlefield if you've never actually been to one, that would be a good thing. Maybe start reading some general stuff on archaeology. Certainly wouldn't hurt to get some of the general background reading.
Yeah,
from a material culture and artifact studies perspective, go and look at your local museums. See them as someone who is curious about why are there artifacts on display? What are they doing? What's this in society? And also, how might I generate that sort of information? Just become curious, maybe in a different way, about the material culture, both on display or more generally, in society.
Yeah, I mean, I would add to that. It would probably be a very good idea. I mean, it's something that we're interested in as well. Is think about things like how things are presented. what are the stories being told and how are the artifacts being used in that way? And just start the whole process of really thinking through how archaeologists communicate the stories that we tell, because that's relevant for all the courses that we do. So a museum is a great place to do that, because that's where you're seeing somebody telling a story using a whole series of different methods, artifacts, written word, photographs, video clips, all that sort of stuff. Think about that. Think about how effective it is, whether there are things that could be better, whether the sort of stories that are being told are ones that maybe could be improved on. That's really going to help.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion. I always encourage incoming students, because I'm interested in landscape archaeology and the way we see remains of the past in the wider landscape too. A bit like you have, Ian, go out and visit a landscape, visit a heritage landscape, go somewhere in your neighborhood and look at historic buildings. But as you were both saying, do it with that new critical eye that you're trying to develop, to go to that place with your nascent professional archaeologist hat on and think, what stories are being told, how are the artifacts being used, what choices are being made, what can I see and observe myself. So really start getting that hands-on experience and building that in for yourself. So I think those are really wonderful things that anyone can do over the next month as they are getting ready for their degree, and hopefully, build up a bit of enthusiasm as well for what they're going to spend the next year doing.
Yeah, because I mean, there is a degree to which what your master's is going to do is really take aside the curtain, and you'll find the Wizard of Oz behind it. You'll see how all the how the stories are told and so on. That's what we're trying to do with you, so that you can actually work in this wonderful world of archaeology that we inhabit.
Yeah. Well, I am hoping to be, as much like the Wizard of Oz as possible in the coming year. We'll see how that goes. So maybe turning for a moment, since I still don't see any new questions in the chat, to practical things and teaching, kind of in the coming year. I wanted to ask each of you, rather than kind of running through the catalog, because everyone can see the catalog, what you're most looking forward to teaching this year. So Ian, maybe you could start off and kind of give us one course that you're particularly looking forward to teaching and say a little bit about it.
I think the Art of War one is one that I really enjoy. This is a core course for the conflict archaeology degree, and it's a first semester course, but it's very much about understanding conflict, seeing where conflict comes from. So we get a bit of prehistory in there, we get a bit of anthropology in there. We basically we try and get across the sort of the breadth of what conflict archaeology actually includes, because people do come in very much with this idea that it's all about the battlefield, but there's so much more to conflict archaeology, and it's all about things like battlefields, but also about infrastructure, about the impact that wars have on society, memorialization, all these kind of things. So it's I think that's my favorite, because it is one that we're talking about the philosophy as much as anything else, and it gives us an opportunity really to kind of really pick into what conflict archaeology is about, what conflict is about. And there's some really big questions about humanity involved in that.
Yeah, there certainly are. Susanna, do you have a course you're particularly looking forward to teaching this year?
this year there's a course that I'll be teaching with my colleague Daniel Calderbank, which is the process of artifact studies for the material culture and artifact studies, although it's open to everyone at master's level if they want to. This is a core course, and I really like teaching this because it's really that mystery, it's linking that mystery behind when you found something in an excavation or come across it in a museum, so that the artifact and wherever its origins are, working to then find out what it is, how to document it, both in terms of, you know, visually, illustrations, drawings, and in terms of doing the research to be able to pass that information on to, for example, maybe the curator who's commissioned the report, to think about things like legislation, conservation, and really to get into also the different materials that you might study, whether they're ceramics or lithics, and think how those materials are studied. And I just really like this course for taking that master's level approach of the understanding that you've probably gained at earlier degrees, more general understanding, and really transforming that into something that is a professional skill. And I really enjoy teaching that. And I really enjoy seeing the students progress through it. So it's something I really enjoy from both those sides.
Yeah, that really has nice synergies with the reason why I enjoy teaching one of my favorite courses, which is the remote sensing course, which I teach every other year and will be running this year. And it's in part because it's an opportunity for students to develop really concrete skills with data analysis, with working with and manipulating and managing a range of different sensing data sets. How do you interrogate it? How do you visualize it? How do you present it? And it's really nice to see students concretely developing those skills as they work their way through the course, and seeing them kind of pop out the end of the course able to do archaeological work that they couldn't do at the beginning. So that's always a really nice thing. So we have a question in the chat that I'm going to respond to, and then we can think a little bit about choosing courses and kind of how to help students think about that. But we've got a question just now from Emily.
Rachel, you've muted yourself.
Sorry, thank you. So how many students are accepted to each program compared to the number of applicants is Emily's question. So Emily, thank you for that. So the answer to this is different every year and different in every program. So I do not have the statistics in front of me at the moment. I can say to you that the main reason that postgraduate students who apply are not accepted is because they don't have some basic qualification that we're looking for. For international students where English isn't their first language, it might be that their IELTS scores, so their language exam scores, aren't high enough. For students who are from a native speaker background, it might be marks in undergraduate courses, although I think that's a little less usual for our programs. One of the key things is if you are coming from a background that's really quite far outside of archaeology, we will often look more carefully at the courses you've taken and your qualifications, because while we have a really diverse range of students who come to us, we really want to make sure students who are coming in are well set up to succeed. And so we want to make sure there's a certain amount of relevant background, that you've got a bit of history, a bit of philosophy, a bit of environmental studies, a bit of something that's going to give you some of the context and ways of thinking that we think are going to help you succeed in our program. So most students who have those core qualifications, who have some relevant background study, have good scores in their undergraduate courses, and have those kind of basic skills in place who apply can get accepted to the program. So our acceptance rate of people who meet all of the qualifications is fairly high. Ian and Susanna, is there anything you would want to add to that?
Well, we've taken people from quite a variety of backgrounds. And one of our most successful former students came in on an English degree, which is, quite a long way away from conflict archaeology. So we want to see that you've got the intellectual ability, but we are very open to people with related degrees. And one of the things that we do, one of the core courses that we do, which is method and practice, we take you through what the kind of techniques are. So, some of them are specific to conflict archaeology, but a lot of them are generally applicable, just so that we can get everybody, by the end of the first semester, everybody, no matter what their background is, has got a similar understanding about how to do archaeology, how to do things in the field, and so on. So we don't really mind if people come with no previous experience of archaeology. It's always good if people have actually been in the field and had the experience of understanding how information comes out the ground. It's useful if they've had some kind of a background with artifacts as well. People with a geographical background, it's great because, we, as Rachel will know, we place a really strong emphasis on landscape because, when you're dealing with battlefields, what you're talking about is a landscape. It's not a site. It's a whole landscape of conflict. So, as I say, we're very Catholic in our tastes as far as what will get you in is concerned. A lot of these decisions are taken before they come to us. The university basically sifts people through, so they're the ones that say, well, this person hasn't got the right language qualifications or whatever. Certainly for the conflict course, we tend to, when there's a question about somebody, we tend to err on the side of giving people a chance, because sometimes people find that it's not for them and they'll drop out. But we prefer to give them the opportunity to give it a go, rather than shut that door on them.
Great. And I think the only other thing to say that might be relevant to this topic, or that your question made me think about, is the size of cohorts in each program. And so this is one of the nice things about Glasgow, is I think we are a nice mid-sized place, in that in the past few years we've had about 30 students on average across the 3 programs overall. And we should say that we're talking about them separately here, but really it's one big master's community. You'll spend the most time in terms of courses with people on your own program, but you'll take lots of courses with people from the other master's programs, and you're sitting within the wider Glasgow archaeology community. But that group of around 30 students who you're with for the year is your core group. And it means it's a small enough place that you will have opportunities to get to know everyone, but a big enough place that you will be exposed to a nice range of ideas and views and people coming from different backgrounds. So the Conflict Heritage program, I think, tends to be between 5 and 10 students, and probably the same, the MSc in archaeology tends to be the largest program. And again, material culture and artifact studies tends to be on that 5 to 10, maybe slightly more than 10. So it varies a bit every year across the programs, but there are around 30 students in total, just to give you an idea of the typical size of the community now.
And that cohort of other students is really, really important, because you learn as much from the other students as you do from the classes that you do. And make sure that you use that opportunity. The people in your classes are people that are going to help you, but the general PGT student cohort, they're great, and you will have opportunities to meet together and to do things together. And as should be becoming clear, as Rachel said, this is effectively one big community. Conflict archaeology might seem a bit kind of wacky and out there, but anything that Susanna teaches with material culture and artifact studies is relevant for us. Anything that Rachel teaches about landscape studies is relevant for us. So all of this, it all feeds in together, and there's a lot of synergy between the different courses. So make the opportunity of if you're not necessarily sitting in on the class, find out from your cohort the things that you need to know from those classes. It will really help you.
I think that's really sound advice, and it leads nicely into the next thing I was going to ask you both about, which is, as students are thinking about specializing within a program, part of that thought process is what courses they want to take. So how might you advise a student to approach picking courses? This is a big thing a lot of our students are thinking about going into the first semester. How do I choose which classes to go for? Susanna, maybe you could take this first this time. How would you advise a student to think about their course choices?
It's a difficult question to answer. In just the way that it is hard to be faced with these choices. So there are some maybe slightly different types of courses. There are courses that are very much about a period or a topic knowledge. So it could be focusing on a knowledge area of the Viking world, or a knowledge area of another period or place, or in terms of the conflict archaeology. Then there are ones that are very much skills based. So digital imaging and archaeology that I also teach on, this is very much about, yes, it's knowledge, of course, of the techniques and the bigger, wider question of using those and maybe the ethics of that, but it's also about learning to use certain pieces of software and hardware. So you might want to think about balancing those. You don't have to. You can go fully for a certain, more a sort of skills-based or knowledge-based with those options. You can have a look at the module handbooks to see what they involve. But also at master's level, what we do within the master's option, the master's course particularly that I work on, but I think all the others, is that master's you have more choice within a course. So you might have more choice of how you'll address a particular assignment. So for example, in an essay, I will set essays where, for example, it might be that you choose an artifact to work on. So everyone's going to work on understanding for example, the production process of an artifact, but you can choose your artifact. And so in that way, even within that course, if you are particularly interested in the medieval world or hunter-gatherers from a certain period, you could choose an artifact that will be developing that knowledge or skill set that you want. The same in digital imaging, you'll have choices of what you can image and how you research those. So again, you can be tailoring within the courses your interests and what you're wanting to get out of the course. So in terms of choosing the modules, yes, there's big decisions to make. Think about how they go together, what you're trying to get from them. But also then within a course, there's still going to be flexibility to get some of the more detailed things that you want out of it and build your whole degree really to develop you in your career.
I think that's really good advice. One thing that I would add to that before I pass it over to Ian for his view, which is related to staff specialism. So you'll get to know all of the staff while you are here, as you're getting to know the community. And I always encourage students to really take advantage of the staff. And so in choosing courses or in choosing projects to work on within courses, to think about what those staff members write about, look at their publications, look at their research profiles, get to know them in person at seminars and at a coffee break, and to choose courses based on what those staff members are particularly excited and enthusiastic about. So if you know that Susanna, who is teaching on material culture and artifact studies and is teaching skills-based courses on the process of artifact studies, she is our expert on textiles, and she also knows a lot about the Bronze Age. So if you are interested in textiles or you're interested in Bronze Age archaeology, you might then say, okay, I want to take a class with this person, right? So kind of being led by the expertise and specialisms in the department. And so one of our other lecturers, Dr. Claudia Glatz, is a specialist in the Near East. And so even if she is teaching modules on a course that's about landscape, you'll know that you'll have opportunities if you're interested in the Near East in any course that Dr. Claudia Glatz is speaking on, that topic's going to come up. So really be thinking about who you're taking the course with, as well as what's kind of written in the course profile and in the syllabus. Ian, do you have any top tips for students in terms of trying to pick their courses out?
Yeah, it's really important to use certainly the second semester when you've got all of these optional courses to pick up skills, and you really want to be looking at what's available and thinking about what kind of work you want to do. So I would really encourage you to kind of really think about that seriously and think about what these courses will actually translate into in your postmaster's life. But at the same time, word of caution, be realistic, because, when it comes down to it, I'm really rubbish at maths. So if a course is going to require a lot of maths, it's not one that I should be doing, because I'm not necessarily going to do very well in it. That said, there's lots of things where maths involved where, when you try it, you'll find that actually the software does all the heavy lifting. So, give it a go. Don't be put off by it. But, what I would say is be realistic about whether you're going to be any good at it, because we don't want people to end up being really disappointed because they find that they're doing something which they're not really enjoying, or they're not coping with it. So be realistic. And one thing is, absolutely, if you start to struggle with a course, talk to the course convener. Talk to people, because they can help you. Don't suffer in silence. Don't stagger along with low marks. Go and talk to them and ask them how you can get better, what you can do, and what they would recommend. But that it's like anything else. You need to balance realism with a desire to improve yourself and to get out of your comfort zone and do something which is actually going to be good for you and will help you in the future. That's what the whole point of a master's is. It's to go beyond the undergraduate level and prepare you for the work world or for the research world. And, don't forget about that side of things.
Yeah, and one other thing that I would add, kind of a different slant perhaps on what you're putting out there, Ian, is to think about balancing. Again, a bit as Susanna was saying, in that if I have a course as a student that I know is going to be really challenging for me because I don't have a strong maths background, but I'm really keen to try the remote sensing course. I would be balancing that choice with other courses that I think I'm going to have an easier time managing, right? So don't pile all of your difficult stuff in the same semester, but pick things you think you have a strong background to do, and then have your stretch course that's going to really help you grow and develop new skills. And again, these are all things that your course convener will be very happy to talk to you about as you're choosing courses heading into the semester, to help you think through all of these different options. So one other thing that was raised by one of our prospective students in advance of this session was about opportunities for learning beyond the courses. So the courses are great, but they are not the only things to do. So they were asking in particular about opportunities to perform research, maybe in our projects, field work beyond what's in the degree, things happening during breaks, student jobs at Glasgow. So are there any particular opportunities you would want to highlight to students? Susanna, maybe I could start you off with this, and maybe you could say something as well about some of the placements and some of the work we do with museums in the community around Glasgow.
So speaking from the perspective of material culture and artifact studies, there are opportunities for placements in the summer months. Not all students do placements, and there is a requirement for getting a certain level in your grades before you're put on a placement. Most students do. And these are often in Glasgow museums or heritage organisations, maybe the excavation units as well. Sometimes they're further afield. So there are opportunities there. We also have a lot of contact with the people working throughout the heritage industry in Glasgow, Scotland, more widely, and more widely than that. But really these local connections are particularly important for our students. And occasionally, or actually, regularly each year, we might get contact from people saying, I would like a number of students to help with this. So opportunities do come up. There's plenty going on. In terms of thinking about opportunities to fill in breaks, I will say there are not very long breaks in the master's programme. In December, you'll probably finish up writing your last essays mid-December. And then I really recommend having a couple of weeks off, come back fresh in January, the same for Easter break, and then summer will be placements and dissertations. So there's a lot to keep you busy. And I think there are really a lot of opportunities that do come your way, especially if you're looking for them. But there's also a matter of being choosy about what you do so that you are not overwhelmed by wonderful opportunities, because then they don't seem so wonderful anymore. But yes, I think there's, for my part, I think the students who come have good opportunities to participate in various different things.
Ian, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, so we've got a couple of things to kind of help out giving people practical experience. One is that core students get the opportunity to spend time at Waterloo. Professor Pollard runs the excavations that have taken place at Waterloo. You'll have seen them in the press recently because of the discovery of skeletal remains and so on this year. Some of our students were there as that was happening. So, that's one thing that should be available for you. Another thing is that we're supposed to be starting a field school with the National Trust for Scotland at Culloden. And that will be, again, excavation and survey. And we would take students along on that. So we try and make sure that there is something like that. We also, when we get opportunities, we work with the Historic Environment Scotland, going out and providing students to help with survey and things like that. So when we get the opportunity, we get people involved in fieldwork projects and so on. So they come up, but apart from the ones that are scheduled, it's very much a question of what actually comes up. So we can't guarantee things, but we will certainly make sure that people do have the opportunity to go. And if that means that we have to shift teaching around, then we do that. So to give people the opportunity. Now we've got this question about any support for finding work after completing the programme, informal or otherwise. Well, as Susanna was saying earlier, we do have very strong links with a lot of heritage organisations across Scotland, and also with the commercial companies. We have the Conflict, Heritage and Archaeology, Conflict, Archaeology and Heritage, I can't remember the name of my own damn course. We have very strong links with Guard Archaeology Limited, and they have been with us on some of the big projects that we've done. And we've always kind of siphoned people through to them. And I'm pretty sure the other courses have done so as well. But the problem that you will have is that non-Britons working in Britain will find it difficult because of the Home Office. And it's nothing to do with us, it's just the environment that we're in. You can work here short term, but you can't really work here long term without going through a massive number of hoops. And it was always bad enough in the old days where you had to prove that you were the only person capable of doing that job if you weren't British, or then it was if you weren't EU. Now it's kind of definitely going to be back to being you have to be British. But they do make it incredibly difficult for people to stay and work. And there are lots and lots of regulations about, whether you can bring your family in and all that kind of stuff. So all of that is entirely out with our control, as you might expect. The other thing I'd like to say is that in the questions that we got before the broadcast, it talked about employment, but it was also about what kind of help we have for further education at the PhD level. And I think I can speak for all of us to say that, we do have a fairly good track record in people converting from masters into PhD. Lots at Glasgow, but also at other universities round about. We've got a lot of PhDs that have come out of conflict archaeology and heritage. I'll pass that one on to the other two, but it's certainly an important element.
Mm-hmm. So I will speak to this as well, because obviously going into work afterwards, both for Americans and for everyone else, is often a big question when you are planning your master's. It's only 1 year, so you kind of start it going, what's next? In terms of tracking into research and tracking into a PhD, one thing we do at Glasgow that's, I think, quite special is we run every year a proposal development workshop and competition. And this isn't just open to our own master's students, but it's open to students who are interested in doing PhDs with us from all over. And one of the things that we do through the research skills core course that you all take is we engage with that process, that application development project proposal process, and we get all of the master students to go and watch students who are pitching their PhD proposals to us. And that's to help you to learn about how the process works, really understand what's required to apply for a PhD, see what kinds of things other people are working on. So we do really invest in practical activities like that to get you geared up for applying for hopefully a funded PhD. So that's something that we do here to help you to work towards that. And it really is an opportunity. Not a lot of places run a big, fairly formal open proposal development process to help students make their PhD applications and make good ones. So that's one thing. The other thing to say in terms of thinking about work afterwards and placements is that you do obviously have access to the university's career services as well as ourselves, and they are very good. So our colleague Ann Duff in careers will be enormously helpful to you in thinking about how you showcase your skills, how you put together a CV, and at a high level, so both outside of archaeology and within archaeology, one of the things we really emphasize at Glasgow, which again we talk about and you will get to develop through all your courses, but in particular the research skills course, is graduate attributes, which is the way we talk here about the broader set of skills and capabilities that you get through your degree and how you can talk to employers about them. So in terms of support for finding work, it's less the local network and the connections, as Ian was speaking about, and more about how do we help you to maximize your chances when you're applying for employment. And one of the things that we do here is we help you to learn to showcase on your CV experiences you've got through the masters, through field work, through project-based work, and translate that into things that you're going to be able to say in an interview, have on your documents, and it really is something that's important and helpful for our students coming out of the program. Susanna, did you want to add anything else in terms of looking for work prospects? I should also say, as the resident American in the room, that no, it is not easy, but it is possible.
Many of the students who come to study for the Material Culture and Artifact Studies program actually are looking to then have careers in broadly what we could call museum and heritage, rather than going on to PhDs. Of course, we're always delighted if you want to do that too, but there are a number of students who've moved into really great jobs, both in the UK, in Scotland, and back in their home countries, in the States, moving into working in museums, in Scotland, working in Historic Environment Scotland, Treasure Trove at the National Museum of Scotland, various archaeology units, GARD that Ian mentioned, AOC, and when possible, I do like to speak to the students about, what was important about, what did they take from their master's program? And yes, the placement might be important, but those skills-based and knowledge-based courses, or even, a certain lecture, an essay that you wrote, might be really important for just showing that you know about that sector. For example, about the legislation of artifacts, so you can work in the Treasure Trove unit. And you've got skills in identification of artifacts, which you've gained through practical sessions we do. And so people are using, as Rachel Opitz has said, people who come through the course, they have that on the CV. They've learnt the skills, they've learnt the knowledge, they can apply them, and employers can see that, whether or not that placement has been particularly with that employer. So I'm always really, really delighted when I hear back from students when they've got into the jobs they want to get into and they've used the skills to get there, because this is, so much what you want to do as a teacher. You want to help people in whatever it is they want to do next and why they've come to you. Yeah, so I think that's what I want to add on that. Thank you.
So we've got about 10 minutes left, and maybe just continuing on a little bit further, thinking about life after the master's. So, people go into master's because they want to develop skills, they want to explore new ideas, and then, as we've been speaking about, people afterwards want to go into research or want to go into a job, hopefully a job connected to archaeology and heritage. So would each of you be willing to say something about a student who you're particularly proud of and where they've ended up? So someone who's just, come through your program and now has a fantastic career somewhere. Ian, could you maybe start us off with that? You were smiling, which makes me think you have someone in mind.
Yes, I do. We had a very big Southern gentleman called Ryan McNutt start our master's course a few years ago, and very quickly we realised that he was a very smart cookie. So he did the master's degree. He did his dissertation looking at cocoa, which is a particular way of analysing landscape that the American military uses. And he then used his dissertation as a test case for his PhD. He did his PhD with us, and having successfully completed his PhD, he then worked for the department for a year or so as a temporary lecturer. And then he got the offer of a job at Georgia Southern University, which was really nice because that's where he comes from. So he was able to move back home. Georgia Southern also had a job for his wife, who is a very talented technical artist, and it worked out absolutely perfect for them. And he has now achieved tenure. So he is actually more stable than I am, because we don't have tenure in Britain. But he is now a tenured member of staff, and definitely, one of our successes. But we've got quite a few people that have been successful, but he's definitely the standout kid.
Well, thanks, Ian. Susanna, do you have a student who has turned out, managed to go somewhere fantastic you'd like to talk about for a minute?
Yes. Just last year, so quite a different example. Last year, there's a student who's studying on the master's program, and when I see suitable job adverts, I post them on the forums for students to, number one, to see that the skills are relevant to the sort of jobs they want, and number two, if they want to apply, then of course they can. And one of the students applied. This was a job working for Historic Environment Scotland, working on a database called CAMMOR. So there are now many job opportunities. Well, within the digital data world of various sorts, and this is an archaeological database, CAMMOR, that's for the archaeology of Scotland. And she applied for the job, and in her interview and for the CV and application, she used several of the courses as the evidence that she could do these jobs. So she'd done, for example, the digital imaging course, so she knew all sorts of techie things about digital imaging, which you'll find out if you come along, that most people don't know. So she had a highly specialist knowledge there. Through the process of artifact studies, she had knowledge of not only what artifacts are, but that contextual background within the society, the legislation, the ethics, for example. There was another course she said was relevant. So basically, everything, she'd gained this knowledge, and got a position that she's really excited about. And I think this is a really great opportunity for her. We'll see where she goes from there, but it's just really nice to see people getting into those first jobs and making of them what they can.
Yeah, thanks, Susanna. I think that is a really key thing to say, that, you know, that first job that you get into is then your stepping stone to perhaps a next job. And we do love hearing back from our students as they progress throughout their careers, and seeing them get to pursue different opportunities, and really thinking about how these skills that they've developed through the master's and the knowledge that they've gained helps them to take their career in different interesting directions. So yeah, that's always something we're kind of delighted to hear about. So we are now very, very nearly at the end. So I think it just remains to wrap up, to say thank you to anyone who was here listening live, and who asked a question, to students we heard from in advance who shared their questions with us, and to say as well that if you do have specific questions, if you're considering the degree program and there's something we didn't get to, please feel free to drop an email to us, and we will do our best to respond, or to put you on to someone who does have the correct answer to your question. And that we will be looking forward to seeing hopefully many of you in the fall. We run a big program of induction activities in September for anyone who's coming, which is an opportunity for you to get to know the staff, to get last minute advice on picking out courses, to get to know the other students in your program, and to figure out who you want to take classes with. To learn about our research seminar series, which we run every year, which is open to the whole community. So to students at the master's level, at the undergraduate level, at the PhD level, and to the staff, and which you basically have to attend as a master's student because it is nicely folded into our research skills course. But you'll get to learn about the specific seminars that are going to be on in the fall. They have a different theme every year. You will get to hear about any particular opportunities that we know about on the horizon in terms of visiting speakers and guest lectures. The Dalrymple lectures are a special University of Glasgow and Glasgow Archaeological Society joint lecture series that runs every year, again with a different theme and topic every year. So you'll hear about that. When you come, you will hear about the lectures and seminars that are run by the First Millennium Study Group. So we certainly point our students at seminar series and talks that are happening in the wider community. So lots and lots of ways to engage and get involved, and we hope we will hear more from you about it, and have the opportunity to meet some of you in person. And I think that is probably it from us. So we're going to wave now and say goodbye, and hopefully we will be hearing from you soon.
Bye.